Everyone, I'm Dr. James Gross, and I'm very excited to be a postdoctoral fellow at ANAMED this year. Over the next few minutes, I will briefly introduce myself and the project I plan to undertake. I'm an archaeologist and economic historian whose research focuses on Anatolia and the Eastern Mediterranean during late antiquity, approximately the 4th to 8th century CE. More specifically, my research draws on evidence for commerce and agricultural production to explore how the economic lives of the non elite were affected by the enormous changes that occurred during this period of transformation when the Roman Empire was in the process of falling. My archaeological expertise is in maritime archaeology and ceramic analysis, with a particular focus on petrography. I received my bachelor's degree in classics and archaeology from Stanford University in 2017, and just this past May, only a few months ago, completed my PhD in the Art and Archaeology of the Mediterranean World program at the University of Pennsylvania. I've had the pleasure and the good fortune of working on field projects in Italy, Greece, and Turkey. My first real experience with archaeology was actually in Turkey as an undergraduate in Dacia through the underwater harbor excavations at Burgaz, Old Cnidos. Between my bachelor's and doctoral studies, I received a Fulbright Research Fellowship back to Turkey, where I collaborated in the study of the amphora cargo from the 7th century Yassı Ada shipwreck, now stored at the Bodrum Museum of Underwater Archaeology. This summer, I began work as a ceramicist for excavations at Antiochia ad Cragum in Antalya, and I look forward to continuing that research in the years ahead. My project while at ANAMED this year is entitled Taxation, Commerce, and the Economy of Western Anatolia at the End of the Roman Empire. Building on the work of my dissertation, this project will explore how the political transformation of the Roman Empire across late antiquity affected the lives of its non elite subjects by considering the economic knock on effects of its tax system. Throughout late antiquity, the Roman state extracted part of its tax revenues in the form of foodstuffs, grain, olive oil, wine, pork, that it then transported over huge distances, hundreds or even in some cases thousands of kilometers, to supply the armies stationed along the empire's borders and the inhabitants of its twin capitals, Rome in the west and Constantinople, now Istanbul, in the east. To accomplish this, the state mobilized the labor, transportation resources like ships and pack animals, and infrastructure necessary to create a vast network, linking tax-paying farmers throughout the Mediterranean with these pools of demand. I contend that those farmers, and indeed everyone implicated in this system of fiscal supply, were able to leverage this network created to move taxes around, to trade or travel for their own ends. As a consequence, the interregional redistribution of taxed foodstuffs by the Roman state had the potential to stimulate a process of what I term commercialization. This means expanding trade with more commodities, more ships, and most importantly, more people on the move. This in turn translates to deeper changes in consumption and production patterns, with, for instance, farmers opting to sell more of their surplus produce to and acquire more of the basic commodities they needed from distant markets. What we can then talk about, though, then, is real changes in people's subsistence strategies, in the way that they made their ends meet through as a indirect consequence of this tax system. With this foundation, my project leverages archaeological evidence for agricultural production, consumption, and trade to determine whether and how this potential to stimulate commercialization was realized in the context of Western Anatolia. Evidence for the production and distribution of amphoras, specialized ceramic transport containers for wine and olive oil in the ancient Mediterranean, sheds light on the scale of export-oriented agricultural production. Shipwrecks and their cargoes are proxies for the intensity of shipping and the shape of maritime trade networks. Finally, the distribution of imported pottery within Western Anatolia provides another proxy for trade networks and key insight into the degree of market orientation in people's consumption strategies. That is, how much of what they were consuming were they making themselves or buying from their neighbor versus through a series of intermediaries from some distant market. Other proxies fill out and complement this data. For my purposes, Western Anatolia, this region, refers roughly to the late Roman provinces of Asia, Caria, Lycia, and the islands, and to the modern regions of Izmir, Aydın, Muğla, Antalya, as well as nearby islands like Kos, Rhodes, and Samos. This region is an ideal case study for several reasons. In the first place, it was the heartland of the Eastern Roman Empire in late antiquity, and a key source of tax revenues for the capital at Constantinople just to the north. As such, it is a region where we would expect the economic impact of fiscal supply to be substantial. The huge expansion in archaeological research in this area of Turkey in recent years means that there is an ample data to reconstruct that impact. That is another huge reason to select Western Anatolia. At the same time, the recency of this new data, so much of it is really produced in the last 10 years, means that we lack synthetic accounts of the economic history of Western Anatolia in late antiquity, that these big picture narratives lag behind that raw data. So part of the impetus for my project is to fill this gap and offer an archaeologically grounded narrative of economic change for this region that was so central to the late Roman Empire. With all that said, I'm very excited to get to work in a few weeks alongside the other fellows at ANAMED and to see how all our projects develop within this unique scholarly community. Thank you.